The photographs were organized by date. 3 years of my life, pinned to a wall in a room I didn't know existed, in a house I thought was mine. My flashlight beam moved across them slowly, methodically, the way I'd been trained to assess any intelligence-gathering operation. Because that's what this was. An operation. And I was the target. There I was buying coffee at the place on 5th Street. There I was at my father's funeral, head bowed, shoulders shaking with grief I thought was private. There I was at the gym, mid-rep on the bench press, completely oblivious to whoever was watching me through the window. My hand trembled slightly. Not from fear. From the controlled fury of a man who has just realized he's been prey his entire marriage. A handwritten schedule hung next to the photos. My weekly routine, laid out with surgical precision. Gym MWF 6 a.m. Work 8 to 6. Poker night every other Thursday with Eric. Even my grocery store trips were logged. A map beside it showed my common routes highlighted in yellow marker. Home to work, work to gym, the shortcut I took through Henderson Park when traffic was bad. In the corner of the room sat a small cot. The sheets were wrinkled. Someone had slept here recently. Within the last day or two, judging by the faint warmth still trapped in the thin mattress when I pressed my palm against it. A notebook sat on a makeshift desk, plywood balanced on 2 sawhorses. My name was written on the cover in neat, feminine script. I opened it. The first page read, Subject Profile, Daniel James Foster. What followed was a clinical dissection of everything I was. My personality traits. Methodical, patient, trusts too easily, believes the best in people. Weakness. Once committed, stays committed regardless of evidence, loyal to a fault. My habits, my weaknesses, my relationship with my father, how close we were, how devastated I'd be when he died, how I'd likely inherit everything since I was an only child. The inheritance was underlined twice. $400,000 with a question mark and the note. Confirm amount with financial records. There were sections on how to approach me. Subject responds well to vulnerability. Play up insecurity. Make him feel protective. He likes to rescue. Notes on our first conversation at Sarah's wedding. Made initial contact using wine spill technique. Subject apologetic. Offered to buy me a drink. Perfect response. He's primed. My throat tightened as I turned the pages. Notes about our first date. Showed vulnerability about past relationships. Subject opened up about his father's expectations. Mentioned inheritance for first time. Father comfortable, but subject doesn't care about money. Good sign. Won't be suspicious of gold digger behavior. Need to appear equally disinterested in finances. Notes about what I'd said in confidence about my dreams, my fears, my insecurities. Everything I'd whispered to my wife in the dark, thinking I was being vulnerable with the woman I loved. There was an entire section on my father. James Foster, 62, widower, retired electrical engineer, devoted to son. Financial records obtained through C's contacts show approximately $400,000 in liquid assets, plus house valued at $280,000. Health appears excellent, but need to verify. Subject mentions father is stubborn about doctors. Opportunity. If he doesn't get regular checkups, gradual deterioration won't raise flags. I had to stop reading. Had to remind myself to breathe. The last entry was dated 2 weeks ago. Timeline acceleration necessary. Subject showing resistance to supplement regimen, claiming stomach upset. Must be more insistent. C says we're running out of patience. Mother agrees. I stared at those words until they blurred. Then I looked at the handwriting again. Really looked at it. I'd seen it before. On the anniversary card Ashley gave me last year, the one where she'd written about how lucky she was to have found me, how I was her everything, how she couldn't imagine life without me. The same loops on the lowercase letters, the same distinctive way she crossed her T's. My wife had written this. My wife had been hunting me. 6 months earlier, I'd been in Seattle on a consulting job when Ashley called, breathless with excitement. "Danny, I found it. I found our house." I was tired. 3 weeks of 14-hour days assessing security vulnerabilities for a tech company that couldn't figure out why their competitors always seemed to be one step ahead. Spoiler, it was their CFO, selling secrets to fund a gambling addiction. That one took me 4 days to crack. "That's great, babe," I said, wedging the phone between my ear and shoulder while I packed my laptop bag. "Send me the listing." "I already set up a showing, tomorrow." "I'm not back until Thursday." "I know, but they have other offers coming in. This market is insane. I can do the walkthrough myself, take videos, send you everything. You trust me, right?" Of course I trusted her. She was my wife. "The sellers are this adorable older couple," she continued. "The Hendersons. They're relocating to Florida to be closer to their grandkids. They're motivated, Danny. It's $40,000 under market value." That should have been my first red flag. In my line of work, when something seems too good to be true, it's because someone is working very hard to make it appear that way. But I was tired, and in love, and I wanted to make her happy. "If you love it, make an offer," I said. "Just have Eric look over the paperwork before we sign anything." "Of course." I could hear her smile through the phone. "I'll handle everything. You focus on your work. I've got this." When I got home Thursday night, she met me at the door with champagne and the news. We were homeowners. She'd handled the closing herself, citing the fact that I was swamped and she wanted to take something off my plate. She'd even used some of my inheritance for the down payment, which she'd convinced me to put in a joint account for our future. "The basement door is boarded up," she mentioned casually as she gave me the tour. "The Hendersons said they had a water leak years ago and just never got around to reopening it. We can deal with it eventually." "We should probably see what's down there," I said. "Could be mold. Foundation issues." Her face did something strange. Just for a second. A flicker of something sharp behind her eyes before the warmth flooded back. "I have this thing about basements," she said, reaching for my hand. "Since I was a kid. Stupid, I know. My therapist and I have been working on it. Can we just leave it for now? Focus on making the upstairs our home?" I pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Whatever you need," I said. What I didn't know then was that she'd spent thousands on that basement. Professional contractors, a hidden entrance, a room specifically designed for surveillance. Of me. 3 months before I found the room, the sound started. A creak from below at 2 in the morning. Footsteps when Ashley was supposedly asleep beside me. Once, coming home early from a canceled client meeting, I could have sworn I heard the basement door close, the boarded one that shouldn't have been able to open at all. "Old house sounds," Ashley said when I mentioned it. She was chopping vegetables for dinner, not looking at me. "These places settle. Dad always said houses have their own language." "Your dad lived in a ranch built in the 80s, she shrugged. "It's probably mice. I'll call an exterminator." She never did. I started keeping notes. Not because I suspected my wife of anything, at least that's what I told myself. Professional habit, pattern recognition, the same skills that made me good at my job told me something was off, even if my heart refused to listen. The sounds only happened when I was supposed to be gone but came home early. They never occurred when both of us were home together. Ashley's working late nights had increased recently, always on Tuesdays and Thursdays, always until after 10. I told myself it was probably nothing, told myself I was being paranoid. Then I installed a motion-activated camera in the basement stairwell anyway, hidden inside an old box of Christmas decorations. What I captured 3 days later destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. 2:14 a.m., Ashley slipping out of bed, moving down the hallway with practiced silence. But she didn't go to the boarded door. She went to the wall of shelving in the utility room and pushed. The whole thing swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a dark entrance I'd walked past 100 times without noticing. She stepped inside. A man's hand reached out from the darkness and pulled her close. I watched the footage 17 times. Zoomed in on that hand. Strong. Male. A distinctive silver watch on the wrist. The same watch I'd seen on Connor Webb when he came to our housewarming party, when he'd shaken my hand and looked me in the eye and told me I was a lucky man. Ashley announced she was going to her mother's for the weekend. Mom's been lonely since Dad passed. I feel guilty that I don't see her more. I nodded from behind my coffee mug, giving away nothing. Tell her I said hello. You could come with me. I've got that report due Monday. You know how it is. She kissed my cheek. Her lips were soft and familiar and felt like a lie. Don't work too hard. I watched her car disappear down the street. Then I went to work. The hidden entrance was exactly where the camera showed it. A false wall with shelving that swung outward on a system of counterweights. The construction was professional, not some amateur weekend project. Someone had paid serious money for this. The room beyond was maybe 15 by 20 feet. No windows. Battery-powered LED lights. Climate-controlled somehow, probably connected to our HVAC without my knowledge. I documented everything. Every photograph I photographed. Every page of the notebook I recorded. And I found more. 3 burner phones in a drawer, each with a single contact saved. One labeled C. One labeled Mom. One labeled Package. Financial statements for an account in Ashley's maiden name, Brennan, at a bank I'd never heard of. Balance, $83,412. Money I couldn't account for from any legitimate source. A life insurance policy, $1.5 million, payable to Ashley upon my death. My signature at the bottom, forged. I'd never seen this document before, but someone had done a solid job mimicking my handwriting. And correspondence. Printed emails between Ashley and someone using an encrypted email service, discussing the timeline and when it's done, and making sure the pattern holds. The pattern. I felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. I dug deeper into the filing cabinet and found property records. The house had been purchased through a shell company called Brennan Holdings LLC 4 years ago, a full year before Ashley and I even met. The previous owners, the Hendersons, didn't exist. There was no elderly couple relocating to Florida. The whole story was manufactured. Ashley hadn't found this house by accident. She'd bought it before she ever knew my name. Before she randomly sat next to me at Sarah's wedding and spilled wine on my jacket and laughed that perfect laugh and asked if she could buy me a drink to make up for it. Every moment of our relationship had been engineered. I was a mark. I didn't confront her. That would have been satisfying but stupid. When you discover you're being hunted, you don't announce yourself to the hunters. You study them. You learn their methods. You prepare. Then you become the thing they should have feared all along. My Army intelligence training kicked in, replacing the panicked husband with the methodical analyst. I spent the next 2 weeks building a dossier on my own wife. Connor Webb had owned this property for 3 years before selling it to Ashley's shell company. But the financial records showed no money changed hands. It was a transfer, not a sale. They'd manufactured paperwork to make it look legitimate, but they'd been sloppy, arrogant. They assumed no one would ever look. High school records from Cedar Ridge showed Ashley Brennan and Connor Webb dated for 2 years. She was the pretty sophomore who caught the eye of the senior quarterback. They'd broken up when she left for college, reconnected on social media, and apparently decided to start a business together. The business of taking everything from men like me. My father's death had been ruled natural causes. Heart attack at 62. Tragic, but not suspicious. He'd always worked too hard, too much stress, not enough self-care. But when I started pulling at that thread, the whole tapestry unraveled. Dad's financial advisor of 20 years had been replaced 6 months before his death. The new firm, Westbrook Financial, had connections to a holding company that shared a registered agent with 3 of Connor Webb's investment properties. I obtained Dad's medical records. For 40 years, his cardiac health had been excellent. Annual physicals, EKGs, the works. Then, in the last 8 months of his life, he'd started complaining of fatigue, chest tightness, irregular heartbeat. His new doctor prescribed medication, but the symptoms worsened. He died in his kitchen, alone, making breakfast. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. I sat in my car outside the house where I'd grown up, where I'd learned to throw a baseball and build a birdhouse and be a decent man. And I let myself understand what I was actually dealing with. Ashley and Connor hadn't just married me for money. They'd killed my father to accelerate the timeline, and they were planning to kill me next. Laura Brennan lived in a modest ranch house in Millbrook, about 40 minutes from our place. Or it had been modest. The new Lexus SUV in the driveway suggested her financial situation had improved recently. Daniel. She seemed genuinely surprised when she opened the door. Also nervous, though she tried to hide it. Ashley didn't tell me you were coming. Wanted to surprise her. I smiled, hoping it looked natural. She's been so stressed lately. Thought I'd drive up and take you both to dinner. Oh, she's not here right now. Running errands. Mind if I wait? She couldn't say no without making it awkward. Of course, come in. I'll make coffee. The house had changed since my last visit. New furniture, new jewelry on Laura's wrists, a tennis bracelet that probably cost more than her car payment. Either she'd come into money or someone was paying her. I sat in her kitchen and made small talk, complimented the renovations, asked about her garden, let her relax. Ashley tells me you've been tired lately, Laura said, setting a mug in front of me. She worries about you. Job stress, you know how it is. Still, you should take care of yourself. Laura's eyes didn't quite meet mine. Especially with, well, heart disease runs in families sometimes. Your father. Dad was healthy as a horse until he wasn't. These things can sneak up on you. She fussed with the sugar bowl. Are you still taking those vitamins Ashley got you? She said they're supposed to help with energy, circulation, all of that. I didn't take any vitamins. At least, not anymore. 2 months ago, Ashley had started giving me supplements. Little brown capsules that she said her naturopath recommended for stress and heart health. After what happened to your dad, she'd said, I just want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. I'd been taking them every morning, until I started feeling worse instead of better. Fatigue, occasional chest tightness. The symptoms had been subtle at first, easy to dismiss as work stress, but they'd been getting worse. I'd stopped taking the pills a week ago, hadn't told Ashley. I've been forgetting, I told Laura. You know how it is. Mornings are chaotic. You should be more consistent. Something flickered behind her eyes. Something that looked almost like anticipation. Ashley says they really work best when you take them every day without fail. I took the remaining capsules to a private lab in the city. Paid cash. Gave a fake name. The results came back 3 days later. The compound buried among the vitamin fillers was a synthetic derivative designed to disrupt cardiac rhythm over time. Not immediately lethal. Nothing that would show up as poison in a standard autopsy. But taken consistently over several months, combined with stress and physical exertion, it would create conditions remarkably similar to natural heart failure. The same method I realized they'd likely used on my father. Eric Tate and I had been friends since freshman orientation at Michigan, when we'd discovered we were both hopeless at beer pong, but excellent at cards. He'd become a family law attorney, specializing in complicated divorces and asset protection. The kind of guy you want in your corner when everything falls apart. I spread my evidence across his kitchen table: photographs, financial records, recordings, lab results, and watched his face go pale. Danny, he sat down heavily. I've seen ugly divorces. This isn't a divorce. This is organized crime. It's a murder conspiracy. At minimum, attempted murder, probably 2 successful ones before me. Eric poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon. Didn't offer me any. Just stared at the documents. Walk me through it again, he said. From the beginning. Slowly. So I did. The house purchase, the hidden room, the photographs, the notebooks detailing my entire life as a research project, the burner phones, the forged insurance policy, the shell company that owned our house before we ever met. And the supplements, I finished, laced with something that destroys cardiac tissue over time. The same compound a private pathologist believes was used on my father. Eric picked up the lab report, read it twice, set it down carefully. Your father's death was ruled natural causes. Because they're good at this, Eric. They've been doing it for years. The compound doesn't show up in standard toxicology screens. It mimics natural heart disease. Combined with stress, physical exertion, maybe some pressure from a new financial advisor to make risky investments. Your father changed financial advisors? 6 months before he died. The new firm has connections to Connor Webb's network. Eric was quiet for a long moment. Then he got up, walked to his home office, and came back with a legal pad and a tape recorder. Tell me everything again, he said. Every detail. Don't leave anything out. The previous victims, I said. I'm still digging, but I found references in Ashley's notebook. 2 other projects before me. The life insurance policies, the property transfers. Connor's been running this operation for at least a decade. And Ashley's mother? The architect. That one still hurt. I'd tried to be a good son-in-law, brought Laura flowers on Mother's Day, helped fix her gutters, sat with her at Christmas dinners while she pretended to like me. Laura identified the targets, found men with aging parents and significant inheritances. Ashley was the bait. Connor was the closer. How did you figure out Laura's involvement? I told him about my visit to her house, the new car, the jewelry, the slip about the vitamins, the way she couldn't meet my eyes. She's been receiving payments, I said. I found records in the basement room, $150,000 in loans from Connor over the past 4 years. Never repaid. Finder's fees, probably. For identifying marks. Eric rubbed his temples. Danny, I don't even know what to call this. A murder ring? A family business of death? They found a system that works. Identify lonely men with money. Send in a beautiful woman. Make him fall in love. Make him feel like the luckiest guy alive. Then slowly, quietly, kill him. Collect the insurance. Move on to the next one. And no one ever noticed. Why would they? Heart disease is the leading cause of death in men over 50. My father was 62, lived alone, was under stress from retirement. When he collapsed in his kitchen, nobody thought to look deeper. Just another sad story. Eric finished his bourbon, poured another. What do you want to do? Destroy them. He nodded slowly. Legally? Preferentially. But if the law fails, I've got contingencies. Danny, I'm not going to murder anyone, Eric. Relax. But I need my assets protected. I need evidence preserved in a way that's admissible. And I need a strategy that doesn't just save my life but puts them in cages for the rest of theirs. Eric drained his glass. What do you want to do? Destroy them. He nodded slowly. Legally? Preferentially. But if the law fails, I've got contingencies. Danny, I'm not going to murder anyone, Eric. Relax. But I need my assets protected. I need evidence preserved in a way that's admissible. And I need a strategy that doesn't just save my life, but puts them in cages for the rest of theirs. Eric pulled out a legal pad. Okay, first thing, we freeze everything. Move your accounts, restructure ownership, put your business assets in trusts they can't touch. You change your will tomorrow. Not just remove Ashley. Make it so she's specifically disinherited and can't contest. Done. Second, we build a criminal case. You've got the supplements, which proves attempted murder. You've got recordings, which proves conspiracy. But you need to establish the pattern, the previous victims. That's what turns this from a domestic dispute into a RICO case. I've got a forensic accountant going through Connor's property records, and I've requested files on 2 suspicious deaths from the past decade. Good. Third, Eric hesitated. You need to keep playing the game. Go home. Be the loving husband. Take the pills, or pretend to. Let them think their plan is working. Because if they suspect you know, they'll accelerate the timeline. Or run. And if they run, we might not catch them. And then some other poor guy. I know. I gathered the documents carefully. I've already thought about this. I'm going to give the performance of my life. The next 6 weeks were an exercise in psychological endurance. I went home, kissed Ashley at the door, told her about my day, made love to her, which was its own special torture. Knowing what I knew, feeling her body against mine, watching her perform the role of devoted wife. I took the pills every morning, made sure she saw me swallow them. Then, when she left for work, I'd excuse myself to the bathroom and spit them into a plastic bag I kept hidden in my shaving kit. I acted tired. Mentioned occasional chest pains. Twice I faked dizzy spells that brought Ashley running with concern painted perfectly on her face. "Baby, you need to see a doctor," she said, pressing her palm to my forehead like she was checking for fever. "I'm worried about you." "I'll make an appointment," I lied. "Probably just stress." "It's more than stress, Danny. Please, for me." "I'll go, I promise." I never did. But I let her think I was getting worse. Meanwhile, my operation continued. I cloned Ashley's burner phones while she slept. Read every text message between her and Connor, between her and Laura. They were careful, no direct references to murder. But the code words were obvious once you knew what to look for. "How's the garden growing?" Connor asked in one message. "The tomatoes are almost ripe," Ashley replied. "Another few weeks, maybe less." Tomatoes. That was me. Ripe for harvesting. I recorded their conversations using a device hidden in the bedroom smoke detector. Our state allowed one-party consent, which meant I could record any conversation I was present for, and anything that happened in my own home. I traced the financial connections between Connor's investment firm and my father's compromised financial advisor. Found evidence that the advisor had received $50,000 in consulting fees from one of Connor's shell companies 3 months after Dad died. And I hired a forensic pathologist to review Dad's medical records. Dr. Rebecca Santos, a former medical examiner with 30 years of experience. She owed me a favor from a case I'd helped her with years ago. Her preliminary findings were devastating. "Your father's symptom progression is consistent with long-term exposure to cardiotoxic compounds," she told me over a secure phone line. "The sudden cardiac arrest, the rapid deterioration in his final months, the specific pattern of cardiac irregularities. I've seen this before. It doesn't prove poisoning, especially with the body cremated, but it establishes a medical pattern. Combined with the supplements you gave me for analysis, they're using the same method. Identical compounds. If I were testifying, I'd say it's beyond reasonable doubt that whoever made those pills knew exactly what they were doing and intended the same outcome." I had enough. Almost. The family dinner was Ashley's idea. "Mom's been feeling disconnected from us," she said over breakfast. "I thought we could have her over. A nice meal, maybe play some cards like we used to." "Sounds good." I smiled at my wife. This weekend? Saturday night? It's a date. I spent the week preparing. Not for the dinner, for what would happen during it. The recording device in the smoke detector was supplemented by 3 additional microphones placed throughout the house. I wanted full coverage. I wanted every whispered word captured. And I planned my collapse down to the second. Saturday night, Laura arrived at 6. Ashley had prepared roast chicken, my favorite, with potatoes and green beans and a bottle of wine that cost more than it should have. We sat at the dining table like a normal family discussing normal things. Laura's book club, Ashley's work project, my supposed health issues. "You look pale, Daniel," Laura observed, not quite hiding her satisfaction. "Are you feeling okay?" "A little tired." I pushed food around my plate. "These past few weeks have been rough." "He's not sleeping well," Ashley added, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "I keep telling him to see a doctor." "You should listen to her," Laura said. "Heart problems don't wait." The word choice was deliberate. A reminder, maybe. A taunt. I waited until after dessert. Until everyone was relaxed. Until Laura had excused herself to use the restroom and Ashley was clearing plates. Then I grabbed my chest. "Danny?" Ashley turned, plate in hand. "Danny, what's wrong?" I slid from my chair, gasping. The hardwood floor was cold against my back. I'd practiced this, researched what cardiac events actually looked like, how the body moved, what sounds a person made when their heart was failing. "Oh God." Ashley dropped the plate. It shattered. "Mom! Mom! Call 911!" Laura appeared in the doorway, frozen. For a moment, I saw it, the flash of triumph behind the mask of concern. "What's happening?" Laura asked. "His heart. Danny, can you hear me? Stay with me." I let my eyes flutter, let my breathing become ragged. I was good at this. Years of intelligence work had taught me how to lie with my entire body. "Danny, stay with me. Please, baby, stay with me." Ashley's hands were on my chest, pressing down like she thought she could hold my heart together through sheer force of will. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who'd been slowly poisoning me for months, now playing the desperate wife trying to keep me alive. "Should I do CPR?" Laura's voice came from somewhere above me. "I took a class once, years ago." "He's breathing, Mom. He's still breathing." "Oh God, what do I do?" I made a choking sound, let my body convulse slightly. "Danny!" Ashley screamed. "Danny, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." I gave her fingers a weak pressure, just enough to sell it. "He's responsive. He's still there." She was crying now. The tears were real. I could feel them dropping onto my face. But they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of frustration, of fear that the plan was moving faster than she'd prepared for. "I'm calling 911. "Wait!" Laura grabbed her arm. "Wait! Mom, what? Is it happening? Already?" There it was, the crack in the facade. "It's faster than we planned." Ashley's voice had changed, harder, calculating. "Call Connor. Tell him to get ready. The account, Mom, not now. Just call him." I lay on the floor, unconscious, recording everything. The microphone in the ceiling captured it all. Ashley made the 911 call. Panicked wife, perfect performance. Laura stepped into the kitchen, phone to her ear, whispering urgently. The paramedics arrived in 12 minutes. By then, I'd stabilized, groggy but responsive. They loaded me into the ambulance while Ashley held my hand, tears streaming down her face. At the hospital, my friends were waiting. Dr. Marcus Reed, a cardiologist who'd consulted on one of my cases, ran unnecessary tests and gave unnecessarily serious updates to Ashley in the waiting room. "His heart is showing significant irregularities," he told her gravely. "We're not sure of the cause. He'll need to stay for observation, possibly several days." Ashley wept. She was very good at weeping. In private, Marcus handed me my phone and my car keys. "Your EKG is perfect," he said. "Whatever you're doing, don't get caught." Not planning on it. I went home 2 days later, officially on bed rest. Ashley fussed over me constantly, adjusting my pillows, bringing me soup I dumped down the sink when she wasn't looking, making sure I took my medication, pills I switched out for harmless vitamin D. I waited. That night, I feigned deep sleep. The medication Ashley thought I was taking would have had me unconscious, and I made sure to play the part, breathing slow and even, body slack, unresponsive to light stimulus. At 2 a.m., I felt the mattress shift. Ashley slipping out of bed with practiced silence. I counted to 30, then followed. She didn't know I'd been mapping the house's sounds for weeks, which floorboards creaked, which stairs groaned, where to step to move silently. I shadowed her down the hallway, keeping to the edges, using the darkness. The hidden entrance swung open. Light spilled from within. I crept closer, pressed myself against the wall, and listened. "How much longer?" Connor's voice. I recognized it from my recordings. The doctor said his heart is giving out. Ashley sounded excited, almost giddy. "Could be weeks, could be days." "And the policies?" "All in place. $1.5 million in life insurance. The house is already in my name through the trust. His business accounts, Eric helped him restructure them, which is annoying. But once I'm the widow, I can contest." "What about his will?" "I watched him sign it last year. Everything to me." Silence. Then the wet sound of a kiss. "Soon," Connor murmured. "Soon," Ashley agreed. I recorded every word. But I didn't leave yet. Something told me to wait. A minute later, a phone rang. Connor answered. "Hey, Mrs. B. Yeah, she's here. Let me put you on speaker." Laura's voice filled the room, tinny through the phone but perfectly audible. "Is he stable?" "Barely," Ashley laughed. A sound I'd never heard from her before, cold and satisfied. I might even feel bad if his father hadn't left us twice as much as we expected. "Don't get sentimental now," Laura warned. "We didn't spend 4 years on this to get squeamish at the finish line. Your father wanted me taken care of. This is me being taken care of." "I know, Mom." "Connor, what about your end? The insurance payout? Already handled. The documentation's clean, same as the others." The others. There it was, confirmation. "Good." Laura's voice softened slightly. "I'm proud of you both. This is our biggest one yet. After this, we can scale back. Maybe retire." "One more after Daniel," Connor said. "I've got a prospect. Widower, tech money, already sniffing around that property I listed in Harborview." They were already planning the next victim. While I lay upstairs, supposedly dying from their poison, they were selecting my successor. I'd heard enough. The next morning, Ashley woke to find me gone. The bed was cold. My car was missing. On my pillow, I'd left a note. "Needed air. Going for a drive. Love you." I didn't come back. From Eric's office downtown, I watched my security cameras capture the chaos. Ashley calling my phone, straight to voicemail. Ashley calling Connor. Ashley calling Laura. The three of them tearing apart the hidden room, discovering the empty spaces where the evidence had been. I'd taken everything, the notebooks, the phones, the photographs, the supplements, the financial documents, and in their place, I'd left a single printed page with 3 words, "I know everything." What followed was 6 months of systematic demolition, financial warfare. Eric filed emergency motions freezing all joint accounts, citing documented evidence of fraud and conspiracy. The funds in these accounts were acquired through fraudulent inducement of marriage, his filing read. Respondent Ashley Foster entered into the marriage with criminal intent, and any community property claims are therefore void. The judge granted the freeze within 48 hours. Ashley's shell company was exposed in court filings, triggering an ownership dispute on the house. I didn't want the house. I never wanted to step foot in it again. But I wanted to make sure she couldn't sell it, couldn't profit from the property she'd bought specifically to facilitate my murder. The IRS received an anonymous but meticulously documented complaint about Connor Webb's financial irregularities, including unreported income from suspicious property transfers, unreported assets in offshore accounts, and structuring violations from his habit of making cash deposits just under the reporting threshold. The federal tax code has teeth when you know where to point them. Legal warfare. I filed for annulment based on fraudulent inducement. The marriage was void from the start because it was obtained through deception. The respondent, my filing stated, began planning her relationship with the petitioner at least 1 year prior to their first meeting, acquired property specifically intended to facilitate surveillance of the petitioner, and entered into the marriage with the express intention of murdering the petitioner for financial gain. The criminal complaint for attempted murder included the supplements, the pathologist's report, and 53 minutes of recorded conversations. It was the longest complaint Detective Vance had ever filed. Social warfare. I was careful here, didn't want to do anything that could compromise the prosecution. But I made sure that Connor's business partners received anonymous tips about financial irregularities in his property dealings. 3 of them pulled out of pending transactions within a month. His commercial real estate empire started crumbling before the trial even began. Ashley's employer received documentation showing she'd used company equipment and work hours to manage Brennan Holdings LLC. They terminated her employment and referred the matter to their legal department. I didn't take pleasure in any of it. Not really. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was something closer to obligation. These people had killed before, would kill again if they could. Every piece of their empire I dismantled was one fewer tool they could use to hurt someone else. Detective Nicole Vance from the County Major Crimes Unit was initially skeptical when I walked into her office with 2 banker's boxes of evidence. She was a hard-looking woman in her early 40s, graying hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much and believed too little. "Let me get this straight," she said, flipping through the first folder. "Your wife and her boyfriend built a hidden room in your basement to spy on you, poisoned your father, and were planning to poison you for the insurance money? And my wife's mother orchestrated the whole thing. They've done it before, at least twice." She looked at me like I was insane, or delusional, or both. "Mr. Foster, do you have any idea how many people walk into this office every week claiming their spouse is trying to kill them? Most of them are dealing with bad marriages and worse imaginations. I have physical evidence, lab analysis, recorded conversations, financial trails that go back a decade. Everyone thinks they have evidence." Detective Vance. I leaned forward. "I spent 12 years in Army intelligence. I've built cases against foreign operatives, corporate spies, and terrorist financiers. I know the difference between paranoia and a pattern." Something shifted in her expression. Professional curiosity, maybe. Army intelligence? Currently a security consultant. Before that, I specialized in identifying financial networks used to fund hostile operations. I know how to follow money, and I know how to document what I find. She glanced at the boxes. "That's a lot of documentation. Give me 48 hours with those boxes. If you're not convinced by then, I'll walk away and handle this myself." "Handle it how?" "That's not something you want to know, detective. But I'd prefer to do this the right way. I'd prefer to see them in prison, not in the ground. But one way or another, they're going to pay for what they did to my father." She studied me for a long moment. Then she reached for the first box. 72 hours, she said. "And if this turns out to be some kind of elaborate revenge fantasy, I'm charging you with filing a false report." Fair enough. She gave me 72. At the end of it, she had a warrant for Connor Webb's properties. In Connor's office safe, They found files on 4 previous operations. 2 had been successful. Men named Gregory Palmer and Richard Ainsley, both dead of apparent cardiac events, both leaving substantial insurance payouts to their grieving widows. 2 had been abandoned mid-operation when the targets proved too difficult or suspicious. Gregory Palmer had been a pharmaceutical sales rep. 61 years old, recently widowed, with a $1.2 million insurance policy through his employer. He'd met a woman named Monica through a real estate showing, one of Connor's properties, and married her after an 8-month courtship. 14 months later, he collapsed at a company retreat. Heart attack. Monica collected the insurance, disappeared to Mexico, and sent Connor his cut. Richard Ainsley had been a retired professor. 58, never married, with substantial retirement savings and no close family. He'd become involved with a woman named Jennifer, another Connor recruit, and they'd begun discussing marriage when his heart condition killed him. Jennifer sold his house, cashed out his accounts, and moved to Europe. The abandoned cases were equally chilling. One target had become suspicious and hired a private investigator, who found nothing because Connor was good at covering his tracks, but the scrutiny made them nervous enough to walk away. Another target had turned out to have a complicated family situation that made the payout too uncertain to be worth the risk. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a business, a cottage industry of death. Ashley hadn't been Connor's only partner. There had been another woman before her, a brunette named Monica, who'd retired to Mexico with her share of the proceeds. Connor was a serial predator. Ashley was his protege. Laura was the scout, the one who identified vulnerable marks, men with money, with aging relatives, with trusting hearts. My father had been selected because he fit the profile. I'd been selected because I was his only heir. Detective Vance called me after the search was complete. "I've been doing this for 18 years, she said. "I've seen serial killers. I've seen organized crime. I've never seen anything quite like this." "How many total?" "That we can prove?" 4. "That we suspect?" "At least 2 more. We're still going through the files." The arrests happened simultaneously on a Tuesday morning in March. It was raining. I remember that. A cold, steady downpour that felt appropriate somehow, like the weather knew what kind of day it was. Ashley was taken from her mother's house at 6 a.m., still in her pajamas, screaming that there had been some mistake. The officers reported that she tried to run at first, out the back door, into the yard, before they caught her. She scratched one of them badly enough that they added resisting arrest to her charges. Connor was arrested at his office at 6:03 a.m., where he'd been meeting with a new client, an undercover officer posing as a wealthy widower. Connor had been showing the officer pictures of available properties, talking about investment opportunities, already laying the groundwork for another operation. He'd been so confident, so sure he'd never get caught. Laura went into custody an hour later. She didn't scream. She didn't protest. She just looked at the officers with a kind of weary resignation, like she'd always known this day would come. When they read her rights, she nodded slowly and said, "I understand." Nothing else. The charges: conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, wire fraud. For Ashley and Connor, additional charges for the deaths of Gregory Palmer and Richard Ainsley. From Eric's office, I watched the news footage of Ashley being led to the patrol car in handcuffs. Her hair was messy, her eyes were red. She looked small and ordinary, nothing like the woman I'd married, the beautiful manipulator who'd convinced me I was loved. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I just breathed. Maybe for the first time in months. Before the trial, Ashley's lawyer contacted Eric to request a meeting. She says she needs to see him. She says she can explain. I agreed. Not because I expected an explanation, because I wanted to see her face when she realized there was nothing left to manipulate. They brought her to a conference room at the detention facility, orange jumpsuit, no makeup. Her hands were cuffed to a chain at her waist. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. The polished, confident woman I'd married had been replaced by something hunted. She started crying the moment she saw me. "Danny." Her voice cracked. "Danny, please. I love you. Whatever you think happened." "I found the room, Ashley. That wasn't—" "I have the notebooks. In your handwriting. I have recordings of you planning my death with Connor. I have the supplements you were using to kill me. The same method you used on my father." "That's not true." She leaned forward, eyes wet and pleading. "Connor, he forced me into this. He threatened me. He said if I didn't do what he wanted, he'd hurt my mother. He'd hurt me. I was a victim, Danny, just like you." "A victim?" "Yes. I was 17 when he started grooming me. I didn't know what I was getting into. By the time I understood, it was too late. He had leverage on me. Evidence of things I'd done. I couldn't get out." I watched her face. Watched the tears track down her cheeks. Watched her hands tremble in the cuffs. "You're good," I said. "You're really good. Even now, even knowing what I know, there's a part of me that wants to believe you. That's how good you are." "Danny." "But I've read the notebooks, Ashley. The ones in your handwriting. Do you remember what you wrote about our first meeting?" "Made initial contact using wine spill technique. Subject apologetic. Offered to buy me a drink. Perfect response. He's primed." "Does that sound like someone being coerced?" Her face flickered. Just for a second, I saw the real person underneath, calculating, assessing, looking for an angle. "That's... Connor made me write those. He wanted documentation. And the entry about my father? If he doesn't get regular checkups, gradual deterioration won't raise flags." "Did Connor make you write that too?" "You're twisting things." "Am I? What about the recording from the basement, the night of my collapse?" "The doctor said his heart is giving out. Could be weeks, could be days." "You sounded excited, Ashley. You sounded happy." "I was playing along. For Connor. If he thought I was having second thoughts." "And when your mother asked if it was happening? When you told her to call Connor and tell him to get ready? Was that playing along too?" Her composure cracked. The tears dried up. Something hard and cold appeared in her eyes. Something I recognized from the recordings. "You don't understand," she said. "You've never understood. You think you're so smart with your security consultant job and your Army intelligence background, but you never saw what was right in front of you." "I see it now." "Do you? Do you really?" She laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "You were so desperate for someone to love you. So desperate to believe that a beautiful woman would actually want someone like you. Your father was the same way. So trusting. So eager to believe the best in people." "Don't talk about my father." "Why not? I knew him better than you think. Visited him twice before he died. He was lonely, Danny, just like you. He talked about you constantly, how proud he was, how he wished you'd settle down, how he hoped you'd find someone special." She smiled. "He was so happy when I told him we were engaged. He said I was exactly what you needed." My hands tightened on the table. "You met my father?" "Connor thought it would be too risky if I showed up after he died. Better to establish a relationship early. So I visited, brought him cookies, listened to his stories, made him feel less alone." Her smile widened. "He even changed his will after one of our visits. Did you know that? Added a clause about his assets passing to any future grandchildren. He was so optimistic about our future. You poisoned him. I adjusted his supplements, the ones his new financial advisor recommended for heart health. He took them every morning just like you did, because that's what people like you do. You trust. You believe. You make it so easy. You're confessing to murder. I'm telling you the truth. Finally. Because it doesn't matter anymore. You've won, Danny. Congratulations. You get to watch me rot in prison and feel righteous about it. But I want you to know something. She leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. You were supposed to be easy. You were supposed to be grateful someone like me even looked at you. Your father's money was supposed to set us up for life. You were supposed to die before you ever figured it out. But you didn't. And now we're both going to spend the rest of our lives in cages. You in your lonely apartment, me in a cell. Neither of us gets to be free. I stood, straightened my jacket. I'm not my father, Ashley. He would have forgiven you. He would have tried to understand. He would have looked for the good in you, even now. I walked to the door. But I'm not him. And in 6 months, when you're sitting in a cell for the rest of your life, I want you to remember something. I turned back. Met her eyes. You thought you were hunting me. You thought I was prey. But I was playing your game before you even knew it was a game. Every time you thought you were winning, I was watching, learning, preparing. Danny, you're going to die in prison, Ashley. Not from poison. Not from some engineered accident. From time. Slow, ordinary time. And no one is going to care. No one is going to remember you. You're going to become nothing. I opened the door. That's not revenge, I said. That's just what you deserve. She screamed after me as I walked away. Ugly, wordless sounds that echoed off the concrete walls. I didn't look back. The trial lasted 4 weeks. I testified for 2 days. Calm, detailed, emotionless. I walked the jury through every piece of evidence, every recording, every connection. I showed them how the operation worked. I introduced them to Gregory Palmer's daughter, a woman named Sarah, who'd always suspected something was wrong with her father's sudden death. She'd hired private investigators, pushed for an autopsy, been dismissed as a grieving daughter who couldn't accept natural causes. I knew something wasn't right, Sarah told the court, her voice breaking. My father was healthy. He hiked. He swam. He'd just passed a complete physical 3 months before he died. And then suddenly his heart just stopped, and his new wife was already asking about the insurance payout before they'd even scheduled the funeral? The prosecutor walked her through the timeline. Gregory Palmer had met a woman named Monica through a real estate transaction, a property Connor Webb had listed. They dated for 8 months, married quickly, and within a year, Gregory was dead. Monica had collected $600,000 in life insurance and disappeared to Mexico. The same pattern. Different victims. I showed them the financial trail that connected Connor Webb to 4 separate accidental deaths across 3 states. The shell companies. The property transfers. The timing that was too perfect to be coincidence. Connor's defense tried to claim Ashley had manipulated him. My client was a successful businessman who became entangled with a dangerous woman, his lawyer argued. He had no knowledge of any poisoning. He thought he was simply conducting real estate transactions. Real estate transactions don't involve hidden rooms and surveillance equipment, the prosecutor responded. They don't involve burner phones with coded messages about ripening tomatoes. They don't involve $150,000 in unreported payments to the mother of your partner. Ashley's defense tried to claim Connor had manipulated her. My client was a young woman, groomed from high school by a predatory older man who trained her to participate in his schemes. She had no choice. She was afraid of what would happen if she refused. Your client wrote detailed notebooks planning the murder of her husband, the prosecutor said. In her own handwriting. She purchased a house through a shell company a year before she even met him. She personally administered poison capsules. She married him knowing she intended to kill him. This wasn't coercion. This was partnership. Laura's defense tried to claim she didn't understand what was happening, that she thought it was just financial fraud, that she never knew anyone would get hurt. Mrs. Brennan, the prosecutor said during cross-examination. On the night your son-in-law collapsed, you were recorded saying, "Is it happening? Already?" What did you think was happening? Laura's face went pale. I don't recall saying that. We have audio recordings, Mrs. Brennan. You also asked about the account. What account? I don't remember. You've received $150,000 from Connor Webb over 4 years. Payments that coincide with the murders of Gregory Palmer and Richard Ainsley. Can you explain that? They were loans. You never repaid them. I intended to. Mrs. Brennan, isn't it true that you identified Daniel Foster as a target? That you knew about his father's inheritance, his trusting nature, his vulnerability after his mother's death? That you told your daughter he would be perfect? Laura's composure shattered. She started crying. Real tears this time, tears of someone who knew they were caught. I never wanted anyone to get hurt, she sobbed. It was supposed to be easy money. Connor said they wouldn't suffer. He said it would be quick. The courtroom went silent. None of it worked. The recordings were too clear. The pattern was too obvious. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Connor Webb, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to life without parole. Ashley Foster, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 45 years to life. Laura Brennan, guilty of conspiracy. Sentenced to 18 years. I sold the house. I couldn't stand to be in it anymore. The profits, after legal fees, went into a foundation I established in my father's name. The Foster Financial Education Fund, dedicated to helping seniors identify and avoid predatory schemes. Dad would have liked that, I think. He always believed in teaching people to help themselves. I moved to Portland. New city, new apartment. Same skills, different application. I consult for law enforcement now, helping identify financial predators and building cases against the people who prey on the vulnerable. It pays less than corporate work, but I sleep better. Eric visits when he can. We drink beer and play cards and don't talk about what happened unless I bring it up first. You seeing anyone? He asked last month. No. Danny. I'm not ready. Maybe I won't ever be. I need to trust my own judgment again before I trust anyone else. He didn't push. He's a good friend. Last Tuesday, I visited my father's grave for the first time since the funeral. I'd been avoiding it. Too many complicated feelings. Too much guilt about what I hadn't seen, what I hadn't protected him from. I sat on the grass for an hour, told him everything. The whole story, start to finish. The room, the poison, the recordings, the trial. I'm sorry, I said finally. I should have been paying more attention. I should have protected you. The wind rustled through the oak trees. Somewhere nearby, a bird called. But I got them, I continued. All of them. They're going to spend the rest of their lives in cells, thinking about what they did. And I'm going to spend mine making sure no one else has to go through this. I left a letter weighted down with a stone. Everything I couldn't say out loud, written in my own handwriting. Then I walked away, and I didn't look back. I got home that night to find a letter in my mailbox. No return address, no postmark. Someone had hand-delivered it. Inside was a single photograph. Me, 4 months ago, walking to my new job, my new city, my new life. On the back, in handwriting I'd never seen before, 3 words. Connor had partners. I stood in my kitchen, staring at those words, feeling the familiar cold settle into my chest. This wasn't over. I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer. Inside, files, notebooks, recording equipment, the tools of the trade I'd hoped to leave behind. I pulled out a fresh legal pad and a pen. Then I started writing,